Thanks everyone for joining. This is our traditional guys. I have podcast with every one of you, so our audience knows you. So welcome again. Thank you so much for joining, and thanks for taking out time for this very amazing topic, actually, which is the basis of everything, right? Data, information, knowledge, and wisdom. So just to give a background, I was having a conversation with Ben on LinkedIn where we were talking about this all data, information, knowledge, and wisdom, and that is where I put up my context as well. So which was not a traditional context actually. I don't agree with traditional pyramid, whatever it's like that, right? Which says data, information, knowledge, and wisdom. I don't agree. So I thought it's best to jump into a panel discussion and learn from you guys, put up my contacts, my perspective, and let's see how it goes. So we start from Ben, the guy. I think Ben is very much into it. We started with that. I think Ben, let's start. Let's open this floor with your context.
Thank you, Mustafa. And just as a disclaimer, this pyramid is not my pyramid. It's not my invention.
Of course.
So kudos to whomever invented it,
Yeah, yeah,
not
yeah.
mine. But I found it very useful in my work because it helped me to identify a problem in the industry that I saw being quite prevalent. So just to quickly describe the concept as such, if you imagine yourself a triangular shape, a pyramid, then on the bottom of the pyramid, you have data that you collect. And out of data, you derive information. For example, you collect some blood pressure measurements, systolic, diastolic blood pressure. That is raw data. And then through derivation, you can judge whether you have high blood pressure, normal blood pressure, or low blood pressure. That's just a piece of information. And then knowledge is to compare that blood pressure typology to the population segments that you're in, to the age that you have, to the gender that you have, etc., etc. And then, of course, wisdom is to make the right decision and maybe say, I should cut down on the ice cream that I eat. The reason may be so the reason why it is a pyramid shape is that you need a lot of data to eventually come to a little bit of wisdom on top of it. And it is also the equivalent to the proportionality of the size of the segments of the pyramid, how you invest your work, time, and money to the top of the wisdom. Now, problem, at least in my industry that I observe in the pharmaceutical and healthcare industry, is that very often we have an inverted pyramid. Everybody is focusing on the top of the pyramid. Everybody wants to have the insights, the wisdom. Everybody wants to have smart AI algorithms. And very few people invest in the bottom of the pyramid. That's where the uncool work is happening. That's where you have to clean. That's where you have to curate, standardize, add metadata. And so an inverted pyramid doesn't stand stable. And I guess that's what we see quite often. So that's just in a nutshell to show you my thinking.
No, that's the traditional one. I would agree. And yes, when you say reverse pyramid, that's the challenge we are facing. That everybody, actually, I don't blame customers. When I say customer, it is vendor. Sorry, is business. I normally say that uh, when product-based companies comes and most of the SIs who are focused more on their revenue generation rather than customers benefit, that is where this reverse pyramid comes into picture, because they go and sell this all sexy jargons, all those things, and they sell it over, right? That's how it goes. Next, I would like to invite Maarten. I think he is also very much into data. I had a session with him and I was amazed, just like I talked rest of you, but he has tremendous understanding and depth of data. That is normally how I look. I have a OCD problem, by the way. So whenever I go into any technology, I normally go in a very depth what actually it matters. So Maarten, floor is all yours.
Yeah, I like your explanation, Ben. I have problems with the whole idea of separating the four, because I think they aren't separated. But as a tool to discuss the reverse attention, it is extremely valid. And it is also problem directed. And I think that is the more important part of it. And on the other hand, if you talk about blood pressure, at all knowing that blood pressure is something, that's where it starts. So that is why I say I can't separate them.
Yeah, no, this is a very good point. Absolutely.
So it is. I see it very much as a problem solver way of looking at things, and as a sales of the value of data, which is essential.
It's a tool. It's a tool. And like any other tool, it has
Yeah.
its flaws, it has its limitations, of course.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, okay. So let's move towards Nathalie. Am I pronouncing your name correct? Natalie or Nathalie? How?
Nathalie. Yes,
Nathalie.
Nathalie is fine.
Yeah, yeah. Nathalie.
We French people like to put a H in the middle of it without pronouncing it.
Okay.
So I think this triangle, whatever, upside down or not, I think the one thing that I'd like to mention is how scattered the data. The data might exist, but it's very scattered. Maarten mentioned the context and knowing that it's the blood pressure that you're talking about. So that is very important. But that data doesn't just appear. You've got the people who are generating it. They know what it is, but as soon as it goes to the next person, do they know what it is? So that's where the scattering happens for me. So whatever it's data that we're talking about information, then to the knowledge and so on, it's getting very diluted, and that pyramid, for me, the building block at the bottom are getting very wonky, like a Jenga tower. If you know the falling tower type, that's where I think that one of the problems. That's where the situation is. We make it a problem. It is a problem because the wisdom that we seek to get is very difficult to attain. But let's see what we can do about it.
Okay, okay. Thanks, Nathalie, for this input. I think, yes, this data is something, the foundation is something we all need to work on. And I think when we talk about different places on CDO role, so CDO role traditionally is more focused on this data piece rather than information and wisdom. I think that is where this whole unbalance is coming because they are building the framework, they are not looking into the business value. So there are different ways to look into it, but today's our topic is not CDO, but I'm just putting this around that. John, what's your take on this?
Yes, so it's quite interesting. We have a similar pyramid, the data section called the data product pyramid, where the top it's exactly the same from the first three. So you've got data, information, knowledge, but the top is decision rather than wisdom, which same thing. So, and what's interesting for me, all the stuff you said was everyone said has been absolutely right. I mean, one of the things for me, it's a tool. But one of the things that it was trying to solve was something I've been doing for 20, 30 years. Getting business people to articulate what they actually want to do is really difficult, right? We know this, right? It's very, very tricky. Sometimes they don't know. Sometimes it's hard to explain it, that kind of stuff. So I've got the data product pyramid, which is very like your pyramid, Ben, to actually be able to ask a bunch of questions. What outcome do you want? Oh, so I want a dashboard. No, you don't want an dashboard. You want an outcome. What's that? I want some KPIs. I want to just give me the data. No. Tell me exactly what you want. What's the decision? What's the outcome? Oh, I want to be able to optimize my customer service team. I want to increase my conversion rates. And the idea of the pyramid, one of the ideas is basically, so you start asking questions. What's the outcome? What do I need to make that outcome? Oh, I need to understand what demand is. Well, that's knowledge. So that's something above and beyond the data. What do I need to know to get the outcome, to get the demand? Oh, I need to understand what's happened before. Oh, that's historical. That's information. That's like a KPI. What do you need to understand to that? Oh, I need to get the data from X, Y, and Z. So what you end up having is effectively, to your point, being a tool, is a way of decomposing the problem in nice business-friendly terms really quickly. And for us, each one of those questions almost maps to a product. So that first one's a decision product. Actually, so tell me, give me a team schedule. Based and this next one is basically give me a demand. Oh, that's a time series forecast. Oh, what do you do about that? Oh, that's a KPI. That's a classic metric, a derived metric. And the data hooks in. Actually, even though we put it at the bottom, it hooks in everywhere. Fundamentally, it doesn't actually come in and hook in everywhere. So you define from the top down, but then you want to say, actually, we've got this pyramid, all these nice little components, all these nice little pieces. Can we actually do this? Right, let's go down to the bottom. Let's try the first one, because if we can't try the first one at the bottom, we can't do any of it. But we want to do that really, really quickly. We want to bring in the data to, again, Nathalie, your point, it's going to be scattered everywhere. Let's go and find it. Let's build that first metric that's at the bottom of that pyramid to do the whole use case. If we can't do that, we can't do anything, but I don't want to spend 6 months and 10 million quid doing that, right? I want to be able to actually do prototype it. And also, the other thing that's really interesting is you go through this process, you start building these pyramids, the pyramids change. You actually say, well, actually, I think the business is structured this way, and you come at the end of it, actually, it isn't structured. That data isn't over there. That KPI is actually not what you need, it's something else. So what you end up is actually defining almost like a business process from the bottom up. Fundamentally, you're starting the top down and then the bottom up, and you're actually getting people thinking about the process and the outcomes and with the data, and then proving it out. Obviously, we've got some tech to actually allow you to prove this out really quickly. We call them AI digital twins, which actually allows you to prototype that whole pyramid in like a matter of days and weeks rather than months and years. And that actually gives the feasibility, it leaves the cost down, and it actually it avoids the big transformation program. So your CDO, for instance, becomes much more, if they own that process, become much more consultant, to your point, must have around. It's this business language, this is business outcomes, this is business transformation, not just talking about curating data and this kind of stuff. But also there's another point about about people like trying to curate data to start with. You don't know the data until you use it. And again, to come back to your point, Ben, around this tool, sorry, Maarten, you said basically you need to join it is an end-to-end process. So the data is always at what you only have to use the data when you know what you want to do with it. So don't go away and build a whole lake and kind of, this sort of stuff. Spend six months a year, many millions to build this lake before you know what you want to do with the data. You want to be able to prototype it. You want to be able to see what it's using, but on a use case business context. So I'm all in this kind of process. I say we call it slightly differently, but it's exactly the same concept.
And John, just if I may jump in, I think just the way you jumped now up and down the pyramid, you gave a proof of concept for Maarten's point, right? That it's not, these segments are not separable from each other. They are all intertwined with each other.
Exactly.
Even to the point where if you use, again, blood pressure as an example, it is good to know, which is on the knowledge level, right?
Yeah.
That there is something called the white coat syndrome, which, by the way, I have myself. The moment a white coat approaches me, which is usually a nurse or a doctor, and tries to put the manchette on my arm to measure, my blood pressure goes up. So the measurement itself already contains certain information that if you're not aware of it, you will read it out in a wrong way. So it's very intertwined, the whole thing.
Exactly right. But to come back to the point, you only take the blood pressure if you've got a symptom you want to show, right? Fundamentally, or you've got, even if you're doing preventative, you're trying to prevent X, Y, Z, but you've got an outcome always in mind. Yes. Rather than let's just take your blood pressure, let's just take blood test every 6 weeks. Why? It's like, well, why are you going to do that? So again, the whole concept of the pyramid is, in my mind, it's the outcome, and basically allowing people to kind of understand what that outcome is, and so getting away from just the data collection, which we see all the time, right?
Okay.
You always need a purpose.
Please go ahead.
I was just saying that you always need a purpose. You always need to understand what your goal is, what you're trying to achieve, because yes, that wisdom or right at the top and so on. So what? You need to know what you want to
Yeah.
achieve, because
You have to be careful with that a bit. I agree that usually that is the best way, but if you want to do advanced analytics or need to do advanced analytics, then your use case is not as clear cut as suggested. So I always keep that in mind as an important part of it.
Well, I just disagree with that. I think the use case, the outcome that you want to get, the path to getting to it might be different. So in the advanced analytics, AI, machine learning, you always have a business that you should always have some sort of business objective or some hypothesis. And then the path to getting to that will be different, but the hypothesis shouldn't. If you don't have that business or hypothesis in mind, advanced analytics aren't going to help you, right?
I agree.
I
agree. The hypothesis is very important.
Yeah.
But that is not a decision.
Well, it could be. It could be. It could be. If we're losing customers. So the hypothesis is we're losing customers because we're segmenting them wrong, and we're doing wrong campaigns. So you've got something you're measuring or something you're seeing an impact, and you have a hypothesis why that's happening, and then use AI, machine learning to understand what that is. You may get it wrong. Actually, it's not because of that. It's because our product's too expensive. So another hypothesis: let's do a price testing kind of approach to see if that. You should always have that kind of what you're trying. If it's not an outcome, but actually something you're trying to work towards and against, and say, or an impact of the business fundamentally.
Can I throw a curveball in? Can I throw a curveball in just to see how that one lands with you? In healthcare, one of the big topics that we are looking at the moment is secondary use of data. Right. So you basically collect data for a specific purpose with an hypothesis, right? But what originally and traditionally used to happen was that then the data lands in a regulatory graveyard. And what I mean by that is that for regulatory reasons, you need to keep the data for 25 years. But it's stuck somewhere in the, on an old server. Nobody cares about it, right?
Yeah.
And what we found, however, is that if you prepare the data in a certain way, you curate it, you augment it with metadata, you support it with knowledge graphs, with semantic layer underneath, you actually can do pretty cool things with it downstream with advanced analytics. To the extreme case, now I give you an example where we repurposed old data. We even repurposed old tissue samples, and we ran whole genome sequencing over it, which back in those days was almost unpayable when the samples were taken. And we found potentially new treatment targets in cancer immunotherapy out of old data. That is pretty cool. And that hypothesis, that purpose was not there yet when the data has been collected. So there might be an additional meta level of usage of data that at the creation time of the data, we are not even aware yet. That's just
I love this curveball. I was first educated as a historian, and as a historian, you only get secondhand data.
That's a good point. That's a very good point.
It is.
Okay,
yeah.
So just to bring our conversation towards that, and I'll take your example as well. And I think, Ben, the example you have put it in that matches what I believe this pyramid should look like. So now here the curveball comes from me. So disclaimer is just my hypothesis, is just my way of looking into this pyramid. You guys can disagree with this rather than educate me as well. So for me, being a data guy, being a OCD guy, right? For me, data is of course down there. But on top of that, for me, information and knowledge comes together side by side. And then on top, wisdom comes. Question is why? Why I'm thinking like this? For me, knowledge can be driven from data itself, because you can have a knowledge, because knowledge is metadata. Let's take the example of this blood pressure, right? What is blood pressure? How it works, what it can do, what its symptoms, what its can pros and cons, all is a knowledge. But the moment you ask a question, the moment requirement comes in, tell us based on which scenarios certain number of people can have certain level of blood pressure. For example, if people are in the hot season, their blood pressure will be high. If there are X, Y, Z different scenarios. So that's an information. For me, any question has an answer. Answer is an information. And people can have a very good knowledge of something, but they might not have an information until unless there's a requirement. So for me, knowledge can come from data, information can come from data, but now the people who has good knowledge and people who has good information means experience, means they have heard, they have gone through all question and answers, a lot of, right? A lot of time we hear, right, people saying, hey, this old guy has a great wisdom. We never say a young guy has a good wisdom. No, it's always the old folks have a good vision. And if young guy says something very good, we can always say it's a wise decision. We never say that person is wise, right? So I feel if you have gone through the path, you have so much of information and knowledge that makes a wisdom. Now, you to create a strategy, you don't need information. To create a strategy, you don't need knowledge separately one to one. You need both, right? Strategy people are those people who are very experienced people, right on top of the hierarchy of an organization, very experienced people. They have gone through all this and they normally create strategies. Okay, now my apologies. I've been very so Ben, let's start
Mustafa,
with it. What do you think about this?
I think just now that you said that, my head is exploding, thinking that you basically are describing the dispute between Plato and Aristotle. Just because they had a debate on what is knowledge. Because at the end of the day, we need to decipher what do we mean by knowledge,
Yeah,
right?
absolutely.
What does knowledge mean, and where does knowledge come from, right? And is knowledge something that is being aggregated through evidence? And evidence would again stem back to the pyramid, as postulated before, data, information, and you distill it into knowledge. That's the one. That's the Aristotle way.
Okay.
Or is it what Plato would say, remembering? So there is a idea, a realm of knowledge, of a commonly accessible space of ideals, and learning and knowing is just a process of remembering. And dependent on where you come from and which definition of knowledge you use, you superposition it to information or not. You see where I'm going, or am I just
No,
going
you're
completely,
absolutely right.
guys? If I go completely wrong, then please tell me.
No, no,
But
your
I
second
think
example.
that's the debate we have, right?
Mhm.
It's hierarchical or is it complementary?
See, the second example you push, right, that some information comes and you pour it to knowledge. I feel once you take an information out of it, information means again answers of questions. Once you have answer of questions and that data or whatever you want to call it, you pour it back into a data world. It goes back into the
But
data.
but how do you know that the answer is correct?
Of
So you
course,
get,
of course.
you see, this is the problem with knowledge, right?
Okay. So when you say there's a question, there is an answer. Of course, someone has to say this is a correct answer, and value has been created. Once correct value is created, this information goes back into the data. It's written into the data. Now, someone is reading this whole system, right? It becomes a book, another page of a book. So someone has read the whole book. He has a very good knowledge of the book. But the moment you ask a question, tell me a context of certain character do another character of that story, that become information. That's not no knowledge. So moving next, Maarten, what do you think about that?
I find it extremely difficult, as I said, to differentiate between all four of them actually. Every data point is laden with knowledge, and there was the wisdom to choose those data points to be entered in the system. So yeah, for me,
So you're still saying everything together and starting from, you're saying context.
from a philosophical point of view, coming back from a practical point of view, I think it is very useful to separate them.
Okay. So next, Nathalie, what do you think about this definition? I just screwed up everything I know, but what do you think about that?
I think it's very likely that it's a combination of both. You first need some knowledge, I would say, to seek the information, but the information will feed your knowledge. So it's a bit of a chicken and egg situation that you need to combine both the information and the knowledge together. So, as I say, chicken and egg, which one comes first? You need to observe first what's happening to derive some knowledge. But you need to have some knowledge that something is happening to be able to observe it and then get some more knowledge out of it.
Okay.
That's how I see it. So it's very cyclical, and I think it was Maarten saying that it's all linked together. You can't really dissociate any of it.
Okay. Let me
I
put an
think what
example.
you can dissociate.
Let me put one
Sorry.
more example here. As we brought in another example of a book, story book, right? There are two characters. There are many characters in a book, and you want to know about two characters, right? So even if you haven't read the whole book, you have read certain pages regarding those two characters, you can get an information about those two characters, certain information, right? So knowledge is about reading the whole book, right? I feel you can extract information from a data without having a knowledge, because knowledge is everything. Another example, metadata, right? Metadata comes under the RAM of the knowledge because you need to know what is data. But even if you don't have a metadata, yes, it will be difficult for you to extract information, but you can still have the information. You don't need a complete metadata to have information, right? I'm a big fan of metadata. I'm not saying I'm not a fan of metadata. I feel if you have a metadata properly defined there, you can reduce 80% of jobs. But we are comparing knowledge versus information. What I'm saying here is you can go into a certain tables and you can find a salary, categorization of salary within the same table. You can get information. Tell me how many number of employees have salaries from 10,000, 20, and 20 to 50. You can take it from one table. That's an information. But knowledge is these employees are from which department, from which reason, right? Who is from which demographic, what is the age, what is the experience? That's whole knowledge piece, right? So Natalie, that's what I'm referring, right? That for me, I think information and knowledge can be taken in parallel, I would say. I'll
Can I
come
jump in?
to you, John. Yeah.
So the bit we're kind of talking around, we're missing is context, right?
Yeah,
Fundamentally, you know, so business context, environmental context. What's the system? And I don't mean IT system. I mean, what's the environmental system I'm trying to? Because data is all about snapshotting a particular state in time of a particular system, right? That's what it's about. It's coming a bit back to your kind of Ben Heijden uncertainty principle, where you can't if you try and measure something too closely, you affect it, right? But as data is basically someone's interpretation of a state of a system. That's fundamentally what it's about. Fundamentally, it's I'm capturing an interpretation, because it's never so to try and extract something useful. I'm not going to talk about the information. That's kind of philosophical. I'm trying and make it concrete. I'm trying to do something useful. So if it's something I want to do or want to understand, then I need to look at data and then apply context on top of it. Can I do that? Can I apply it from a business perspective? Can I do it from a technical perspective? Like I said, you said, I look in a table, I can overlay my business context on that table. If that table's structured well, if it's not structured well, I have no clue. The table headings are complete gobbledygook. The data's not, is not well structured. It's for a particular purpose. So can I overlay that context? So knowledge and wisdom, or outcomes for me, is always down to kind of, can I overlay the context? Can I extract the context that I need? And that's, so if I read a whole book, I mean, you've got OCD, I've got ADHD, so I can't read a whole book. It's just, I want the summary bits of it, right? Can I extract the nuggets of information out that I need to do what I need to do? Fundamentally, so can I overlay the content? And I think this is kind of where we try and bring it back to something a bit more concrete, because the philosophical discussions are fantastic, but I think I'm a concrete guy. It's like I'm trying to get to the outcome. Can we actually then use the data? Can I extract what I need to do? Can I overlay stuff onto it? And coming back to a bit to what you said, Ben, before around, can I augment the data with future usage in mind? I can only do that if I've got a very clear idea of the business process or the business system that's to be on to actually overlay. So, I know for a fact that blood pressure goes along with, measuring cholesterol. So let's actually augment it. We're going to blood pressure. Let's do the cholesterol at the same time. Let's join them together, because I know those two things are linked for future. That's my business context, my business understanding to overlay on top of that, and that I see done very well. I'm still scarred a little bit from the Hadoop days, where we, let's took all the data into a big data lake and suddenly match what happened, and it didn't work because the data wasn't structured well, it wasn't thought about, So I'm very much trying to join the two worlds, where you just chuck everything in the lake, nightmare, versus let's do everything just in time. There's a tension that we need to go between there. It's not binary. It's not one or the other or in the middle. It depends on the use case. If you can augment data with business context, and to me that's more important than actually a lot of metadata. I think people get technical metadata. People get very hung up on that. It's the business the business context on top of that. If you can do that without spending a fortune, without spending years trying to do enterprise data models and that kind of stuff, fantastic. But you need to it's a balance. It's always a balance. That's my 2 cents anyway.
Yeah.
I would say, maybe to your point, John, I think that's for me, where the valuable step happens. I was just reflecting again on, Mustafa, your point with information and knowledge. And for me, information is still value neutral in a sense. Information is, this is the temperature curve in my village over the last month.
Yes,
that's it.
It's a measurement.
Yes,
it's a measurement, right? And it's derived from single measurement points, okay? And you draw a graph, and then it turns into information. That's it. Now, knowledge, to my understanding, is when context comes in. That's when intention, context, and even some sort of judgment comes in, right? You put that piece of information into relation to something else you already know. I know now I'm making a logical circle here, but that's when information jumps into something that is more valuable in the sense that I make a judgment of it.
That's for me.
So maybe that's helpful.
Actually, for me, that is wisdom. The moment you know what is the temperature of your village for last 1 month and rest of the whole information, I think that is where wisdom comes. Hey, next week, what will be the temperature of your village? And the people who has gone through the journey in your village, they will know in next 2 weeks, there will be a rain, because you also have information of weather. And that's a wisdom. Based on that, you will take a decision that rain is going to come. We have to bring in some shelters. For me, that is wisdom, actually.
Right. That's a big point, isn't it? No, there's an overlay of your business context. You're going above the information level, because
yes.
actually If it's going to, I need to know if it's going to rain next week because the village might be flooded. He's going to move people out. That's me going higher up and understanding based on my experience. But the information is not telling me that. I mean, information is not to evacuate people. It's going to just all it's going to tell me is how much rain has been.
Yeah. You need a knowledge as well.
that,
Yeah, you need a historical knowledge as well, that what other things need to be done, right? Shelter is different kind of shelter. It can be buses. It can be a physical shelter. It can be a umbrella as well. It depends, right? And number of people in your village, right? Is your village having good roads and not? All that is knowledge actually. Formula.
Well, I think that's information. The knowledge is knowing what it means. So knowing's got a bad. So there's 15 potholes in the road. That's the information. That's the measurement. I know that we're going to get a delivery next month with 4 trucks, and I know that if those potholes aren't fixed, those trucks won't be able to get through. But that's not the information's not telling me that. It's my knowledge of what it means. So I'm going up. So I know there's 4 trucks coming. I know what delivery. I know what the times are. Those are all information, but it's my knowledge that strings it all together, which goes above the information. That's the way we think about it from the knowledge level. It's that kind of business overlay, and ultimately the decision is basically these people need to be fed. And that's the decision. And the knowledge is basically, I know that the trucks are going to get through. The impact of them not getting through is the decision. It's basically they won't get fed. And this is kind of where I go for decision, knowledge, information.
So continuing your example, John, right? When you say there are 15 holes, this information came when someone went through that road and there were 15 holes over there.
Yeah.
That was the information, and that information was stored back to the data, and that become a knowledge. Because next time when someone goes through that road, knowledge is already there. There are 15 holes. You have to be very careful. Now you have to take a decision. Next month, 10 trucks are coming into this village to do some work. So that knowledge, historical knowledge, and your information, which is again historical, but that was a experience you have, that will go into a above level of parameter, which is wisdom, which will tell you, hey, this is what we need to do. Maarten, I think you want to say something.
That's true. But I could go out and measure those holes. I think there's some holes down there. Could someone go and measure them? So they might be historical knowledge. So I just go and go. I can see them. That's a measurement. I can see 15 holes. Now we need to do something about it. So there's no historical knowledge there.
This is very good.
See, actually, it is wisdom.
You see, that is also knowledge. That is data. Remember that.
To me, it is wisdom that you measure how many potholes there are.
Yeah.
Because if you don't, you will not get any information, let alone knowledge.
Yeah.
And that is making it so complex.
Exactly.
Because I speak several languages, and that implies that I have many ways of encoding my knowledge. A pothole is a very nice word for something that doesn't happen in my country almost, and having this word for it makes a pothole in my country more explanatory, and that is all knowledge that is behind anything I measure, anything I choose to measure.
Yeah, actually, let me tell one funny story. John, when you say, right, you can view the potholes and you can take a decision. So I was in a discussion with someone, right, and tried to convince a guy that data is something. The guy was not convinced that not everything is data. I told him, yes, everything is data. Now the question is, what is data, right? Because someone says, what is data? The obvious answer from anyone is, most of the people is, everything is data, right? Which is correct, but as definition, you have to explain someone as a kid that what is data. For me, the properties and behavior of an entity is data, right? Property is nothing more than metadata. Behavior is something like if you have a car, you have to wash the car, you have to change the oil, all those things is an internal behavior, and car can be sold. You can put it into a race. That's an external behavior, right? So properties and behavior is data. I try to explain this guy. Now, this guy says, no, John, coming to you, right? So they said, no, nothing is that. I said, okay, you go into your washroom. There are so many bottles over there. You remove the tags of all those bottles. Unless you don't have a metadata, how you will recognize what? The guy says, no, I will look at the color of the liquid and I will decide that. I said, okay, color is also a data. What if shampoo and hand wash and conditioner is same color? The answer was, I will taste. I said, taste is also a data. Sorry, John, but the thing is, even if that is also a data, right? So end of the day, yes. Okay, now we have a time check of 4 minutes. Nathalie need to leave. So I think it was a great session, and we again nailed it. It was a very open session. We conflicted as well. We debated as well. Just for a closing marks, we start from Ben. Ben, what do you think? Did we take out something from this session?
No, for me, definitely. I mean, I have food for thought. I will have to think about it a little bit more, especially the meaning of words, because at
Yes.
the end of the day, this is what we found now, right? We use words, but we have to be very clear. What do we mean by that?
Yeah.
And to Maarten's point, it's beautiful to most of us are multilingual, and words, even though they seem to mean the same thing, but they are overlaid with a context, with a rich, also historical and cultural context, which is exactly the reason why you put six people together, and you five, I can't count anymore, and you have this discussion, right?
Yeah.
Which is fantastic. This is fantastic, but it makes also our jobs as data scientists in business so complex, because we have to put everything into context. Everything, nothing stands for itself without context to something else. And that's us who very often have to compile this into something meaningful for the business. That's
Awesome.
my
Maarten.
takeaway.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you, Ben. Maarten, your last few words.
Yeah, my most important takeaway is about the reverse attention with which we started, because for me the process part is always furthest away from my first thoughts. I always try to dive too deep in the philosophy of things. So I like that one very much.
Thank you so much. Nathalie, what's your takeaway?
I think my takeaway, we had I would say, a very philosophical discussion there today on all those subjects, but all of us have a different understanding, a different experience, and that is really important. And when it comes to data, like Maarten was saying, pothole is a word that he understands, but might mean something slightly different. And the context, going back to what Ben said, and people's experience, people knowledge, that is, it's all with context. So it's a very tricky thing to work with. And we all try, I think, with our best intention to disseminate some wisdom, some knowledge, some information. But yeah, you need to have the context around here and the understanding of the people. That is very tricky situation, tricky things to do.
Last but not the least, John.
So this is a microcosm of the data world, right? We always spend so much time debating around terms and this and that, and it's just what it is. I think also because data people tend to be classifiers, that tends to be the kind of the persona that gets drawn to data. I want to put it in a little box, it's that kind of stuff. I mean, it's great. It's a fantastic discussion. I think, and for me, it's always bringing it back to kind of what we're doing. What's the thing we're driving? And I think that understanding terms is super. It's absolutely important. That's kind of one of the first things you need to do. We've all been in meetings where you've all discussed something, all come out with different interpretations, right? And it's not just the fact that you guys are fantastic and multilingual. I'm not. I've gone a room with people of my local country have come up with exactly the same thing, especially us Brits who don't speak our mind. It's a national problem. But so yes, understand the semantics of things and agreeing them up front. The whole data product debate is another classic one, right? We all know that. But it's always about concreteness. What are we trying to do? Bring it always back to what are we trying to do, fundamentally. And I think this just cemented my thought process around it, and it's been really great. So thank you for that.
Awesome. So just to close this session, again, thank you so much. So my takeaway from this is it's an obvious thing. As I'm mentioning in my 4x4 formula, the second pillar is everything has to start with question, answers, action, and value. If you don't have a value, you don't have a question, answer, action, and value, then something is wrong. We should not walk onto this path. Thank you so much, everyone. It was pleasure having you. I think this is a good panel. We can plan another session somewhere, maybe couple of quarters from here with your calendars availability. Let's connect back on LinkedIn group and find another slot 6 months from here. Thank you so much. Have a nice day and a nice weekend.
Thanks.
Thank you, Mustafa.
Thank you.
Thank you
Thanks.
all.
Bye.
Bye.
Cheers.
Bye.
Bye.